Welcome back to the Optical Edge podcast. I'm Elise Quevedo.
And I'm Will Townsend.
From AI infrastructure to cloud computing and global connectivity, optical networks are the backbone of everything we rely on. In these episodes, we focus on the importance of optical networking, the latest news, we break down the technologies shaping highest speed data transmission, and we will also speak with industry leaders building the next generation of networks. This is the Optical Edge. Let's get started. And Will, let's talk about how finally we are seeing connectivity getting the attention it deserves. And I mean it from a compute perspective and modern AI like GPUs, accelerators, because the last few days people are talking about how Marvell can become a $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
Anytime, you know this, Will, anytime NVIDIA's Jensen Huang talks, people listen. And everyone is talking about the latest ComputeX event, NVIDIA's partnership with Marvell Technology. I mean, Will, I watched the keynote with Marvell's
Yeah.
CEO, Matt Murphy, and
Yeah.
the first thing Huang said when he comes on the stage next to Murphy is, the next $1 trillion company, ladies and
Yeah.
gentlemen. That's a huge vote of confidence, but there is a huge demand for connectivity right now. And with modern AI needs, companies like Marvell are supplying custom components that are high in demand in the new AI infrastructure ecosystem. So even though we seem to be overloaded by AI being part of pretty much every tech conversation, to
Yeah.
me, AI is to tech what oxygen is to humans. We need it.
Ooh.
We cannot live without it. And modern AI is that new oxygen discovery that is breathing life into many ecosystems. So
Hmm.
if we can think of the compute of today and the new infrastructure of today due to the modern AI requirements as the new oxygen of technology, then maybe everyone will pay more attention to what happens at the basic layer of connectivity. So, Will,
Hmm.
what are your thoughts on this? Because last month
Yeah.
Marvel was one of your top picks to watch during our last podcast.
Yeah. And I love that introduction, Elise. Very masterfully done. It was interesting when Jensen, mentioned this on stage. And I mean, Marvell stock, it bounced up 30%. Now, to get to $1 trillion market cap, Marvell stock would have to more than quadruple in price, right? So it would take some time to get there. To your point, I think their market cap sitting at about $250 million dollars. But this really demonstrates the importance, the growing importance of connectivity. And certainly, initially, all the focus was on compute, on GPUs, and that sort of thing, rightfully so. And you've seen some sort of irrational exuberance in the market when you look at the stock, pops with AMD, with Dell, in particular. But it really emphasizes the fact that connectivity is very, very important because at the end of the day, when you look at the ability to be able to cluster data centers and that sort of thing to marshal compute in such a way that you scale it very, very aggressively, you need high performance connectivity to do that. Marvell, and again, we've talked about Marvell. They do data center interconnects. They support optical components, and they're very, very well positioned. I mean, time will tell if they can get there. But hey, like I said, I mean, look at it. Look at AMD trading, at one point at 550 US dollars. I think it's drifted down a little bit. Nvidia, kind of floated up. They're back down to about that $200 level. But the networking is going to become more and more important. In fact, this is really interesting, Elise. So I spent time with Cisco last week at Cisco Live, and CEO Chuck Robbins mentioned something on stage that actually the network is becoming more important than the node. And I think what he meant by that was that in order to unlock the true promise of AI, you have to cluster and you have to connect, all of these GPUs and all of these servers. So it's a long way to answer your question. Can Marvell get there? Yes, but there are also other companies in this space that are focused on connectivity, and it's just a lot of fun to watch everything unfold.
Oh, absolutely, Will. You were spot on. I mean, the bottom line, okay, so Marvell is kicking some butt right now. We know this, and I cannot wait to see how long it takes them to reach that 1 trillion market value cap. But they're
Yeah,
not the only ones. There are more companies. We will be talking about them over the next few months and
yeah,
seeing how they're evolving. So, with that said, there was another biggest story, Will, not long ago. It was about 2, 3 months ago, which was the Nokia acquisition of Infinera to
yeah,
create an innovation powerhouse in optical networks. Now, I think that Nokia was very smart when
yeah,
they made that acquisition because it now puts them in a new category with hyperscalers and web scale customers. Because now, I mean, this is what I see. Nokia can easily join the Marvell, Ciena, coherent level conversations, which means
hmm
this acquisition has elevated them in the
yeah,
optical networking arena. It's not
yeah,
that they were small. Nokia is one of the big tech giants, but they were not in optical, and boom, just like that, they are. And in essence, it means more growth and more earnings to Nokia. So, what are your thoughts and
yeah.
expectations on how this part, well, how the acquisition is going to develop?
So I think the point that you made, they have been in optical for quite some time, but um, I think maybe your perception is that they've been more focused traditionally in mobility, right? And so now with their new CEO, Justin Hodder, coming from Intel, they're doubling down on enterprise, and it's a smart move with AI. And fundamentally, optical networking is a huge foundational element to facilitate AI workloads and applications. We were just talking about that earlier with respect to Marvell, but what I like about this acquisition for Nokia, and this closed back in late February, is that to your point, it gives them a footprint with hyperscalers, number one, and that's very important as they continue to build their autonomous network strategy and their double down investment in AI. But it gives them more uniform geographic coverage as well. So it gives them a very large footprint, in North America, which was something that was lacking because obviously Nokia is based in Europe. So I like it. I think it's going to play very well into Nokia's new playbook with respect to focusing on enterprise AI, continuing to build out their autonomous networks platform, which, by the way, I think you know this. I've worked with Nokia in the past to help educate the market around what they're doing. And certainly Ericsson is doing a lot there as well, and also with APIs and programmability and that sort of thing. And then even HPE. From an enterprise perspective, they are very focused on what they're calling their self-driving network vision. And I'll actually be at Discover next week in Las Vegas with the HPE team, and I'll be sharing my insights via X, and I'll be doing some video work, on the ground, and I'll also be spending some time with Rami Rahim that is now running the combined networking business, both the Aruba and Juniper networking business at HPE. So yeah, so there's a lot going on, within the autonomous networks realm, and from my perspective, optical is going to drive a lot of that, and I think Nokia's got a great opportunity here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what people miss out sometimes, only because you mentioned the CEO of Nokia, and with a lot of the leadership, they're all interconnected. Like sometimes they leave one company, they go to another, they're taking their knowledge. Or when I
Yeah.
mentioned that now they're making a footprint in optical, yeah, you were spot on. They've done optical before, but with a lot of these companies, they double in many different arenas
hmm
of technology, but they're known for one big
For
thing.
one
And
particular
then
thing.
people forget, hold on, they were also doing a little bit of optical. They were also doing a little bit
Yeah.
of that. but not in such a big way that the revenue and the growth results will actually make analysts like us or journalists want to talk about it. And now
Hmm.
they do want to talk about it
Yeah,
because Nokia did that acquisition.
yeah,
And since we're on that mode of financial results, there was one that is. It makes me curious a little bit, and is
yeah,
the Ciena.
yeah,
Let's talk about the
sure.
Ciena news about
Yeah,
from the quarter to financial results. Because to me, and this may be a bit of a bold comparison that I'm going to make, but all the talk reminds me of the crypto boom and the ups and downs, especially with
yeah,
Bitcoin a few years ago. We saw exceeding expectations, then plunges before the market stabilized
right.
more, but it's still $1 trillion market. So
Yeah,
optical networks with modern AI to me are a bit similar. We're still in the early stages, so seeing plunges even when there is a gain is
yeah,
part of that market journey. Not, of course, easy for the big investors, but
yeah,
nonetheless, growing pains that we need to go through. And this is where the Jensen effect, if we want to
right.
call it that, should be considered. I
Yeah,
think investors over the next few years are going to see the differentiation and need to invest in different areas equally. For example,
hmm,
Bill, we've got NVIDIA equals compute. Marvell Technology equals AI networking and connectivity inside the data
hmm,
center. Nokia and Infinera, optical transport between data
hmm.
centers and AI campuses. It's like a spider web. Everything is connected.
Yeah,
So, what are your thoughts for you on that
hmm,
Jensen effect and also the
yeah.
Ciena news?
Well, a lot of this is, a little bit of a irrational exuberance, and it makes me think back to the dot-com days when the public internet launched. I was in a junior product marketing position at Dell, and I remember when that occurred. Just like I think we can all remember when we were first exposed to ChatGPT back in 2023, right? I mean, these are sort of watershed moments within the industry. And so I think we're going to continue to see this irrational exuberance, or or even irrational, just kind of activity. Like, for example, and Nvidia continues to blow it out quarter by quarter, yet the stock drops. So Ciena posts 40% year-over-year revenue growth, solid profitability beyond expectations, and the stock price drops 14% the next day. So it's a really interesting market. There are a lot of different things going on right now. I think there's a little bit of profit taking, that's going on right now too. That basically results in stock values dropping temporarily. But at the end of the day, I think kind of my take from like Ciena's recent announcements is that some of the financial Wall Street analysts found fault with the fact that a lot of their top line revenue is concentrated with a few very large clients. And hey, that's a very, viable, understandable, concern. If the majority of your revenue is weighted with just a few, customers, then you're susceptible to future challenges, whether they're supply chain oriented or it's just a pullback on spending, or that sort of thing. But I mean, I think Lumen, Ciena, these service providers, their fundamentals are strong, and the revenue production and the profitability production that they're taking forward is a result of the investment in modern AI infrastructure. And so, and the need, to consume these services, the need for low latency, very high throughput connectivity, and the next big opportunity that everyone's talking about is inference, right? So it's acknowledged that NVIDIA, has a lock, with respect to training, but what's going to happen with Edge AI is the opportunity for inference and, at network edges, and for a diversity of companies to participate in that. From a silicon perspective, Qualcomm, ARM, many others, even Intel and AMD with just general purpose CPUs can perform inferencing. So you don't need specialization in silicon to do that. So it's all exciting. And I think what it means, it just means we're going to see a little more market volatility. And but what's real exciting, at least from my perspective, is just the pace of innovation and how quickly modern AI is moving. And so it's just fun to watch from my perspective.
Oh, I love it. I mean, it is. It is flying at a speed that we cannot even think about.
No.
And I think sometimes we need to reel back that excitement. I'm someone, you know me for many years now, I get too excited sometimes. And it's like, oh my God. And we need to rein it back. I had a conversation not long ago. It was about drone technology. And I was asking about AI and developments. And it's the first time in a long time I've heard a company say back to me, actually, we need to stop the engineers sometimes. We need to reel them back. And I was like, oh my God, that is so refreshing to hear. Because right now it's all about more, faster, more, more.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that they go, we need to reel our engineers in because they get too excited. And of course, it's a different market. It was entertainment technology. But I understood it's like, oh my God, this applies to pretty much all the tech arenas. Because with all these $1 trillion market caps right now that we're talking, when
Yep.
you're only at 230, whoa, 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 hold on a second. Thank
With
you, Jensen.
Marvell.
Yes, you
Yeah.
got the audience going, but it's going to be a few years before they reach the $1 trillion market cap. And I want to talk about that now because are we
Mhm.
really there yet? Even though that was part of my first question. Any
We
Planck talks, it pushes the market. But how is this gonna actually come to real terms within the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years? Because this is not gonna happen. 230 to a 1 trillion in the next year.
Maybe not for Marvell, but there
Well,
there
yeah.
are there are roughly a dozen companies that have a market cap of 1 trillion or greater. And the day that we're recording this podcast, Friday, June 12th, is the day that SpaceX is launching its massive $75 billion IPO, which is going to make Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire.
Very rich.
So think about that. And obviously there are concerns by some around that sort of thing, um, but it is exciting. It is an exciting time in the tech industry. It's exciting to see what SpaceX is doing. They're a big part of the low Earth orbit satellite connectivity space race that I like to talk about. I've spent time with ASG Space Mobile. You've got Starlink, you've got Amazon that wants to get into it. Amazon's had a few setbacks recently, but I think they can recover, pretty quickly. But it's exciting, and wow, it's 2026. We've got a dozen companies that have $1 trillion plus values. And I think, hey, OpenAI, Anthropic, they're readying IPOs as well. There's every reason to believe that those could be trillion, dollar, potential valuations long term as well. So it's exciting. It's fun. Um, it's just, pop your popcorn, Elise.
I mean, I do like that you mentioned space because I mean, I wrote about the Artemis launch not long ago. I've been
Yeah, you
reading
did.
up, and my calendar is filled with the Artemis 3 previews, even though they're not launching until next year. But we're all excited because we're all still reeling from Artemis 2. And again, this is all down to technology, space
Yeah.
technology. As you also mentioned, Elon Musk right now, SpaceX, that is a 50-50 with people. Either you hate it or you love it. For me as well, I love space technology. We need someone that continues to talk about it. And yes, in essence, we are a few years away from more companies reaching those huge market caps. And one of the most important lessons from market history, Will, is that major wealth creation comes from leadership teams that
Hmm.
consistently invest through multiple technology cycles.
Yeah.
Because every transformative market, and whether it was semiconductors, the internet that you also mentioned, cloud computing, now AI, started with a breakthrough. But those companies that became those long-term leaders and winners of today were the ones that kept reinvesting in R&D way long after their initial success. So this is where leadership comes in because
Yeah.
innovation needs someone to believe and has conviction before the opportunity is obvious to the rest of the world. So
Right.
the best leadership teams allocate capital years ahead of demand. They build
Well,
talent pipelines, they invest through downturns when the competitors say, we're stopping here. And we're seeing that play out today in AI, Will. And both you and I, we see it with people who are fearful in
yeah.
investing toward their future. I think people forget Nvidia's position, Marvell, Dell, they weren't built in the last couple of years. They were
No.
built through many, many years of hardships, loads of
Yeah.
investment in R&D, in GPUs, in software, in developer ecosystems. So the same applies now on this AI infrastructure stack from networking companies to optical providers. So
Hmm.
all those leaders of the future that we still have no idea who they are going to be the ones that invest today,
Yeah.
investments that are not really going to pay off for many years to come. I mean, and SpaceX is one of them. So, and we know markets evolve in waves. I mean, you and I together, we've been on this planet for over 100 years. First is innovation, then you have the adoption, then the
Yeah.
scale, and then the ecosystem forms around that technology, and we're forgetting that sometimes. The bottom line
Hmm.
for me is that a strong leadership and disciplined R&D are
Yeah.
what turn those breakthrough ideas into industry defining platforms as we're learning today. And Will, you
Hmm.
have spent a lot of time with more leadership teams. Very recently, you've just mentioned you're heading off to a couple more events. What are your thoughts on the role leadership plays in these companies today?
Well, I mean, it's instrumental, and I guess, I won't belabor the point, but what you mentioned around, investment for the long term is what defines success. Not many people may know this, but NVIDIA invested in its CUDA platform for nearly a decade before it saw any appreciable revenue that flew through it. And hey, you could argue like GPU technology that was originally designed for gaming, who would have known that, it would have unlocked, modern artificial intelligence, but it did. So I think it's just, NVIDIA, they're loved by some, despised by others, but Jensen had a very disciplined approach to, believing in the technology stack that he was creating, and had the opportunity and the capability to be able to make an investment like that over many, many years without, a return. I mean, not a lot of companies have that appetite. Not a lot of companies have a pocketbook that is that deep, but it's a great testament to like what can be accomplished with technology.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think in essence, if I have to sum it up in one sentence for all the new companies, believe in yourself and invest in yourself.
Hmm.
Period. That
Yeah.
that's my takeaway on that one. And
Love it.
I've got a last question. This one is just for you because I want your thoughts.
Yeah.
Everyone is watching the next generation of optical architectures. We're finally seeing more people having the discussions. We are making sure that we talk about it too. But what does it mean in real, tangible outputs? Especially because with global tariffs, they affect hardware inputs, for example, the imports, for example. How does optical networking get affected? I mean, given that we're talking about more $1 trillion market cap companies, how can companies get there with all the challenges on the table?
I don't even know how I would answer
And that's the
that.
$1 million question for to answer throughout the next year.
Yeah, for sure.
To
Yeah,
have
let's let that one percolate for a little bit longer.
But that is a good way of actually ending the podcast because it always means we have something else to talk about. And I do
Sure.
like to poke the bear. I do
Yeah.
like to leave questions on the table for anyone listening to say, ooh. That was a good question. And also, you've just given me an idea because this actually should inspire people. Just because you're asked a question, you don't need to know the answer today. You can go
Yeah,
away, think about it, and
come
we'll give
back.
us a topic for more podcasts. So there you have it, guys. If you were watching episode 2, thank you for being part of the conversation. We're here to create a lasting impact that turns conversations into actionable steps. If you found value in today's outlook, pass it to your network and make sure to follow Will Townsend and me, Elise Quevedo, for more insights in the tech industry. This was The Optical Edge. We'll see you in the next episode.